Thanks for that, Francis, speaking to Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald there a little earlier at the Agriland tent. You're very welcome into the live stream. Day 2 of the ploughing here in Rathneska in County Laois, and the sun has held again today. I see a few scalded and burnt foreheads and shoulders already, so I hope you brought sunscreen. But our first panel of the day, I have a variety of people joining me on the panel today, and we're going to talk about the issues from the ground up. So we're going to discuss what the challenges are, what you, the farmer at home, or the contractor, the advisor, are experiencing, and the challenges and, I suppose, opportunities that might be in the farming industry at the moment. Firstly, I'm joined by John Joe Fitzgerald from the Irish Nature and Hill Farmers Association. Michael Maroney is here with us from the Association of Farm and Forestry Contractors of Ireland. And I'm also joined by Julian Pawlowski. You're an agricultural advisor yourself, specialising in organics, but you're also a member of the ACA. Thank you for joining me, gentlemen, today. So first of all, John Joe, I might go to you in terms of the INHFA. What are some of the prominent issues? I'd say most people can probably predict what you're going to say when it comes to the INHFA, but the most prominent issues, particularly for hill farmers at the moment?
At the moment, I suppose, it's acres. You know, it's been a shambles from start to finish. And I suppose, like, with the interim payments and everything else, and even speaking to advisors yesterday, the landscape actions and commonages, they need to publish those straight away. We need them as farmers, the advisors need them, and, you know, it needs to get out there, and we need to work on it. Because if we come to the end of the acre scheme and all this money is not spent, for the next cap we might be able to draw that money down. So that's a big problem at the moment, I suppose. And the next thing after that would be costs. The rising costs all the time. I know the price of sheep at the moment are good, and cattle, lambs, but it's the costs associated with those to bring them through the winter, keep the ewe on the hill or on the land, and to have the lamb survive, I suppose, right up until you sell it. Now, there's a good price for the lamb, as I say, at the moment, but that, you know, the costs have eaten into that. And I suppose weather, the stress of the weather, it's been raining, I suppose, from last July 23 right up to not too long ago. That's creating fierce stress for farmers. And I suppose, on top of that, then you have schemes, the red tape to deal with schemes, and the paperwork that follows it. You know, it's driving farmers cuckoo is the only way to describe it. I suppose on top of that then, the rising number of TB reactors at the moment, you know, in the country. We held a meeting there in Dingle just over a week ago. We had the department down. They need to do a lot more of those meetings, you know, out throughout the country. And, you know, it was a learning curve for the farmers in the night. They went home with, you know, actions that they could do on their own farms to help them not to bring the TB in. And I suppose we move on from there, then I suppose succession, a big issue. And especially for us hill farmers, where are we going to find the next generation that want to go on the hills farming? And it's a worrying trend, you know, and on top of that, like, I come from West Kerry myself. We see 90 or 95% of the youth emigrating every year. Now, what does the future hold for us if we can get some of those to come back?
Yeah.
And that's the worrying trend. And, you know, if they're gone abroad, all right, we do well in the tourism industry down there, but tourism is not the end-all and be-all of everything. And the cost, I suppose, of building a house, especially in West Kerry, a 3-bedroom house, you're talking between 350,000 and 400,000. And
well, that's if you can get the planning permission in the first place, John Joe, to be honest with you.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of those little issues that are playing in people's mind all the time.
Yeah. Michael Maroney, I'll come to you in terms of contractors. They've had a lot of challenges that they've had to deal with as well over the last 12 months, in particular with weather and work schedules. Similar challenges, but obviously in a different way to what the farmers on the ground themselves are experiencing.
Yeah, Stella, and thanks for having us here today. The biggest issue I face in contractors are costs. and machinery costs have increased significantly.
Yeah.
And repair costs, parts costs for machinery have even doubled, or even in excess of that again. So cost number one, the costs have increased. It's been very difficult from that point of view. And a lot of people are focused on the cost of diesel, and that's only a small percentage of the total cost. It's the machinery operation costs, it's the machinery purchasing costs that are far bigger costs, and machinery replacement costs.
But where are those costs coming from? Because farmer go into a dealer and, you know, a machine that was priced at one price 12 months ago, it's gone up now, the same machine, and they can't really understand who's filtering down those costs. Where's that coming from ultimately?
Well, our impression is that it's coming from the manufacturers at that level. But I mean, we can't control that, but we're faced with a situation where costs are enormous, have increased significantly. Like we're talking about €1,000 per horsepower at this stage. So you're 150 horsepower.
€1,000 per HP?
Yes, so you're looking at 100 horsepower, 150 horsepower tractor at €150,000. So that's a very significant increase in a relatively short period of time. There are other issues. It's not just that issue. Certainty on farms, there's a lot of uncertainty. And the whole issue about fertiliser use and derogation, nutrient management plans has resulted in people in many farms not knowing how much fertiliser they can apply. And that has an impact on crop yields. And then in turn, it has an impact on the work our members do, because yields are less, returns are less, and areas to be worked are a little bit less. So that's starting to have an effect. And if you take a year like last year, where fertiliser use was less, this year some of those soils didn't get a top-up of fertiliser, so returns have been less. And as a consequence of that, we've lots of talk about a fodder crisis or a potential fodder crisis. But in each of those cases, it impacts on the ability of our members to deliver for farmers because of the yields. The other issues related to calendar farming, and most farmers are aware of it. You know, from the point of view of an agricultural contractor, we tend to be SMEs, we're small businesses based in rural areas, delivering services to farming. But at each time that calendar reduces, our ability to employ and retain skillful people is gone. So if our season for work is reduced by 4 months, that's 1/3 of the year. So how do you employ somebody when you have no work for 1/3 of their year, making it very difficult to retain skills that are invaluable, and skills that deliver technology benefits onto farms. So they're priority issues as far as we are concerned. This year, a little bit difficult, very late spring, a lot of pressure on contractors to get work done, you know, at a short, like where people sowing spring barley in the month of May. And the end result of that is, as a consequence of that, we have a situation whereby the harvest is late. And now we have this 14-day rule in terms of cultivation, and virtually impossible to deliver what's needed in terms of that under the circumstances. So we have asked the Minister, for example, this week to extend the slurry spreading dates and to use the technology that's there with Teagasc, and there is an agreed protocol in terms of methane data, grass data, etc. And we should be able to go past October 1 for slurry spreading this year. There's nobody wants to spread slurry this week in the hope of having grass when grass has been really slow. But you're going to be restricted to October 1, so we need that to be extended. And these are practical things where contractors and our own SCI members can deliver for Irish farmers.
Absolutely. And I'll just go to Julian Pawlowski there. You're an agricultural advisor. You work across the country, Julian, I suppose, and you work with your colleagues as well in the ACA. From an advisor point of view, I mean, every step along the chain is having challenges and issues. I mean, when people think, you know, there's a real sort of heavy shoulder on farming at the minute, it's not just farmers. The spin-out industry from agricultural production in this country is huge, and that includes advisors.
Absolutely, yeah, it pushes on massively. I mean, in my job at the moment, I travel the country wide. I work as the organic specialist with the ACA, so I do a lot of KT meetings and things with advisors. So you get a good intel into what they're seeing day to day. And the common theme is just sheer workload at the moment. You have scheme after scheme after scheme, deadline after deadline, and to try and meet those is really difficult. And I think at the moment the main problem is within the Department of Agriculture, if they're putting out a scheme, there doesn't seem to be a lot of, I suppose, discussion between departments within the department. So we may end up with 3 different schemes within a week with a closing deadline, and you're trying to get as many clients into that as possible. Maybe people are missing out because of this, and then you get disgruntled farmers coming back towards you. So I suppose the sheer workload on an agricultural advisor can impact right the way down the whole way across the board for farmers as well.
And with some of these schemes, I mean, is there a general sense, to be honest, because there's definitely a sense of this among farmers, like the department, have they just put a lot of the carts before the horses here in these schemes?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, you see only after a little bit of time whether something's worked or not. You know, some are a roaring success, and you see people moving from one to the other on the back of that. I know Acres this year, there seems to be a good dropout rate from Acres because they've gone through a year or two of it and gone, right, this isn't for me. It's not really what I thought it was or what I signed up to, and maybe moving into something like organics because it's more suitable for them. So, yeah, I suppose it's maybe a little bit more thought into what the scheme is and how it can be delivered, and is it achievable? You know, I mean, as advisors right here doing scorecards, the timeframes are just not achievable, you know, and there isn't really an opportunity there for us. A lot of us are self-employed, so we don't have the same luxury of maybe, you know, if you're sick for a week, you can't take it off. There's a deadline coming, you have to do it. So maybe a bit more of a look into force majeure or what that would look like for us as well, you know.
I understand what you're saying. And talking of timelines and deadlines and Acres scheme there, we were happy to hear, John Joe, today, the opening of the applications for the NPIs for Acres, the non-productive investments. However, farmers are still waiting for the decisions on the ones from 2023.
It is, and even with the landscape actions there that we're going to do on commonages, we still haven't got the list of what we're supposed to do. And you know, the time frame is short. We're moving in now to the third year of it. And some of these actions we mightn't be allowed to do, you know, when the close period comes there for burning and for cutting hedges and everything else. So, like, there needs to be a bit more proactiveness with the department. You know, they need to put the resources in if they want to deliver on this. Like the farmers there, he's willing to stand up, be counted. He's paid the money out, you know, to get into the scheme and stuff. But I think the backward approach of the department, you know, it leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah. And just talking about cash flow, Michael, cash flow is something that we focused on a lot at the moment, particularly this time of year now. It's tight for farmers. But if cash flow is tight for farmers, cash flow is tight for contractors.
It is, and it's always, there's a couple of months that are difficult months in terms of our sector. April is a particularly difficult month in terms of cash flow, but just to put into context, like if you look at the Teagasc National Farm Survey at the moment, the amount spent on contractor services in 2023 was the highest ever, €7,340 per farm on average. Now, obviously, on different farms it was higher and some was lower on some of the smaller livestock farms. But what's interesting, if you look at a trend over the last 15 years, that's still 14% of direct costs on farms. So while the cost for the contractor, the cost for the farmer have gone up, but the contractor is still able to deliver exceptional value onto a farm at 14% of costs, despite having to cope with very significant costs of equipment and now with labour costs. But I think it's important as well is that, you know, this should be a time of opportunity for agriculture, but it's been confused and made complicated by, I would say, so many schemes that farmers don't know what decisions to make, and that's now impacting on us. For example, yesterday evening, I was for the first time made aware there's a national farm scheme run by the National Parks and Wildlife Service. So here's another government body running a scheme to conflict with Acres. And they were almost telling us, not directly, well, we're better than Acres. So why should one department be trying to outsell another department to offer a scheme that nobody fully understands? Yeah. So all that confusion is making it very difficult for farmers to make decisions, and it's obviously making it difficult for young people to look at agriculture as a career. It's too complex to farm today. They need to make it easier.
Well, I suppose, Julian, you know more than most how complex it is, because I'd say you're in and out of meetings on new schemes every day and trying to get the information back to farmers, and they're asking more questions and you're only getting the information.
Yeah, it's constant, it's non-stop, you know. You have queries all the time, you know. A scheme is announced, you mightn't even have heard of it yet, and you're getting a phone call saying, what about this? Or, you know, is it possible for me to go into this? I suppose it was touched on there as well. I mean, we're in a sector where there's a lack of young people. I'm a young professional in the sector, newly into it. I'm 2 or 3 years advising as an advisor and a few years working in the sector in general. But it's a hard sell at the moment to say to somebody, oh, do you want to work a job that's 7 days a week? You don't get a lot of thanks for a lot of the time, you know. So, you know, you're going to see down the road as well a kick on from that. You're going to struggle to get young people coming out of college. You know, why would they choose maybe an advisor route when there's maybe an easier option out there in the agri sector even, you know?
I see what you mean. And with just before we finish up now, I'm conscious of the time, but within the circle that I'm making around you at the moment, as part of a supply chain in agricultural production. You know, Michael can work with John Joe and his cohorts and farmers. You work every day, Julian, with farmers, and probably, you know, you can all work together. So, I mean, call a spade, and what's the common denominator here? Like, it's just, is it just a lack of resources and inefficiency on the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
that seems to be a unanimous agreement here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but there's not joined up thinking on some of these things. It's too complex for people at the moment.
It is very complex.
And then we're adding costs. For example, at the end of this year, you're looking at a tyre recycling scheme and to include tractor tyres, for example. That will cost a contractor about €300 to send just in a levy to change the tyres, on top of the huge cost of tyres in the first place. So the whole industry needs to be aware, like we're loading costs onto a sector. We've now become a high-cost agricultural economy, not because farmers are doing anything wrong, but we have become that. So it's very difficult to retain profitability in a situation where we've become very high cost. And a lot of the costs are come from outside of farmers' gates, but farming has to live with them. Yeah. And then we're, as contractors, you know, we're probably the closest link with many farmers, because in our situation, on average, a contractor will work on 3 farms a day.
Yeah.
So if you take 6 days a week and say 1,500 people in it, like multiply it up, our members will have contact with they'll have about 800,000 contacts with their farms throughout the year. Yeah. Really, really close. The profitability of the farm is very linked to the profitability of the contracting business. We can't live without each other. Yeah. But certainly at a time of high cost and complexity, it's not very helpful.
Absolutely, and I'm sorry we have to leave it there. We're just a bit tight for time today, but a very interesting discussion from all three. John Joe Fitzgerald from the INHFA, Michael Maroney from the FCI, and Julian Pavlovsky, an ACA member and organic advisor. Thank you very much for joining us on our panel today. I think it's time to go back out to the ploughing and see who we're talking to next.